A lady had 3 sons-in-law, and she wanted to know who was the sincerest of them, so she thought of trying them out one by one. One day she asked the eldest one to come and help her with some errands. On the way back home, she deliberately jumped into a water well and started to drown. The eldest, without hesitation, jumped into the well and pulled her out to safety. Next morning, when the eldest woke up, he saw a brand new car parked in his driveway. That was a gift from his mother-in-law as an appreciation. A few days later, she is trying out the middle one. Same story. She asks him for a helping hand, jumps into a water well, and he saves her. Next morning, when he wakes up, he finds a brand new motorbike parked in his driveway. Again, that was a gift from his mother-in-law. A few days later, now she is trying out the youngest one. She jumps into the water well, but the youngest is hesitant to jump after her. He thinks for a few moments that the eldest saved her and got a car, and the middle one saved her and got a bike, so if I save her, she'd probably give me a bicycle, which is not worth the effort, really, so he decides to let her drown. The next morning, he wakes up to find a Ferrari parked in his driveway. That was a gift from his father-in-law. I was a very happy man and was about to get married. There was just one thing bothering me. It was her beautiful younger sister, Sophia. My prospective sister-in-law was 22, wore very tight miniskirts, and generally was braless. She would regularly bend down when she was near me. I always got a nice view. It had to be deliberate. She never did it around anyone else. One day, she called me and asked to come over. To check the wedding invitations, she said. She was alone when I arrived. She whispered to me that she had feelings and desires for me. She couldn't overcome them anymore. She told me that she wanted me just once before I got married. She said, "Before you are committed to my sister." Well, I was in total shock, and I couldn't mutter a word. "I'm going up to my bedroom. If you want just one last wild fling, just come up and have me." I was stunned and frozen in shock as I watched her go up the stairs. I stood there for a moment, then turned and made a beeline straight to the front door. As I'm walking to my car, Lord and behold, my entire future family was standing outside clapping. With tears in his eyes, my father-in-law hugged me and said that I had passed the test and he couldn't ask for a better man for his daughter. And the moral of the story is, always keep the condoms in your car. Two men are walking their dogs, a Doberman and a Chihuahua, when they see a restaurant. They're pretty hungry, so they decide to head in for a bite to eat. Unfortunately, they see a sign out front that says, "No dogs allowed." The man with the Doberman says, "I know what to do, just follow my lead." He throws on a pair of sunglasses and walks in. The waiter tells him, "I'm sorry, sir, we don't allow dogs here." The man says, "Oh, you don't understand, I'm blind, and this is my guide dog." "A Doberman for a guide dog?" the waiter asks, skeptical. "Yes," the man replies. "Dobermans are very loyal. They're easy to train and protective, too. They're born for the job." The waiter sighs and leads the man to a table. The second man, excited by this idea, throws on his sunglasses and walks in. The waiter tells him, "I'm sorry, sir, we don't allow dogs here." The man says, "Oh, you don't understand. I'm blind, and this is my guide dog." "A Chihuahua for a guide dog?" the waiter asks. "A Chihuahua?" the man asks. "They gave me a Chihuahua?" A sign on a restaurant window says, "If you order it and we don't have it, you instantly win $1 million. A man walking by notices the sign and walks in the restaurant and sits down at the table with a smirk on his face. The waiter asks what he will be having, and the man says, "I will have white rhinoceros stew, please." The waiter comes out with a boiling hot bowl of exactly what the man ordered. The man is taken by surprise, but he eats the stew and pays for his very expensive meal. He leaves angrily. The next day he comes back and sits at the table with a smirk on his face again. He tells the waiter, "Today I will have bullet ants stuffed with dolphin meat." The waiter leaves and quickly comes back after a few minutes with exactly what the man ordered. The man, surprised again, eats his meal angrily, pays, and leaves. The next day he comes back and sits at the table and tells the waiter, "Today I will have a lactating mermaid breast sandwich." A few minutes go by, and the waiter comes out holding 2 massive duffel bags with the $1 million. The man, overcome with excitement, says, "I knew it! You don't have mermaid breasts!" The waiter tells him politely, We actually have it, sir. It's just that we ran out of bread. Joe and Bob are sitting outside a cafe enjoying a couple of cigars when a young boy walks out of the ice cream parlor right next door. Joe says, "See that kid over there? Dumbest kid I ever met, watch this." And he calls the kid over. Joe puts 50 cents in one of his hands and a dollar bill in the other and holds them both out to the boy. Joe says, "Which do you want, 50 cents or a dollar?" The boy quickly snatches up the 50 cents, says thank you, and happily walks on his way eating his ice cream. After the boy leaves, Joe says to Bob, "I see that kid once a week. I always see if he takes the dollar. He never does. He always takes the 50 cents. I told you, he's the dumbest kid I've ever seen." Next week, Bob is sitting outside the cafe by himself and sees the same boy come out of the same ice cream parlor and calls him over. The boy comes over and Bob says, "My buddy who I was with last week, he always offers you a dollar or 50 cents. Why do you always take the 50 cents? You know a dollar is worth more, right?" The kid says, "Of course I know it's worth more, but if I take the dollar, he'll quit asking altogether." A blonde, a redhead, and a brunette go on a road trip. In the middle of the night, their car breaks down next to a farm with an old barn. They decide that instead of knocking on the door and waking people up in the middle of the night, they're going to spend the night in the barn. In the morning, the girls wake up to the sound of the old farmer whistling and opening the door to the barn. Since they don't want to get caught, the girls see some old sacks and hide in them. The farmer walks in and says, "I don't remember these sacks being full." He walks up to the first sack where the brunette is hiding. "I wonder what's in here." The brunette goes, "Meow." That's just an old farm cat," the farmer says, and he goes off to the second sack where the redhead is hiding. "Well, what's in this sack?" The redhead goes, "Woof, woof." That's just an old farm dog." The farmer chuckles and makes his way to the final sack where the blonde is hiding. "Now, what in the world could be in this sack here?" The blonde yells out, "Potatoes!" Two English gentlemen are commuters, using the tube to the city. They get on and off at the same stations, and having done it for years, they occasionally nod greetings or even exchange a good morning. One of them looked really unhappy one day, and the other said, "I know we haven't been introduced, but if you don't mind me saying it, you do look a bit peaky." "My false teeth are killing me." If you let me have a good look, I may be able to help you." "Oh, please do. Give me a day or two." With this, they parted. 2 days later, the sufferer was handed a package with false teeth in it. He tried them and was astonished to find they were a great improvement, but a little on the tight side, saying, "Don't worry, I'll try again." 2 days later, he offered another set, but alas, the reaction was, "Much better, but rather on the loose side." "I think I've got it. Let me try just once more." Sure enough, 2 days later, he handed over a set saying, "I think these will really be just right." Putting them in, the sufferer was astonished to find they really were a very good fit. "Thank you so much. These are just right. You must be a wonderful dentist to be able to get false teeth to fit so well just by looking at them." Laughing modestly, the man replied, "Oh, I'm not a dentist. I'm a funeral director." A Chinese doctor can't find a job in a hospital in America, so he opens a clinic and puts a sign outside that reads, "Get treatment for $20. If not cured, get back $100. An American lawyer thinks this is a great opportunity to earn $100 and goes to the clinic. Lawyer: "I have lost my sense of taste." Chinese: "Nurse, bring medicine from box number 14 and put 3 drops in the patient's mouth." Lawyer: "This is kerosene." Chinese: "Congrats, your sense of taste is restored. Give me my $20. The annoyed lawyer goes back after a few days to try to recover his money. Lawyer: "I have lost my memory. I can't remember anything." Chinese: "Nurse, bring medicine from box no. 14 and put 3 drops in his mouth." Lawyer, annoyed: "This is kerosene. You gave this to me last time for restoring my taste." Chinese: "Congrats, you got your memory back. Give me $20. The fuming lawyer pays him and then comes back a week later determined to get back $100. Lawyer: "My eyesight has become very weak. I cannot see at all." Chinese: "Well, I don't have any medicine for that, so take this $100. Lawyer, staring at the note. But this is $20, not $100. Chinese. Congrats, your eyesight is restored. Give me $20. There was a man who took very good care of his body. Every day he lifted weights and jogged 6 miles. One day he looked in the mirror and noticed that he was tanned all over, apart from on his thing. So he decided to do something about it. He went to the beach, took off all his clothes, and buried himself in the sand, except for his thing, which he left sticking out. 2 old ladies were strolling along the beach, one using a cane. Upon seeing the thing sticking up out of the sand, she began to move it around with her cane, remarking to the other lady, "There's no justice in the world." The other old lady asked what she meant. She replied, "Well, when I was 20, I was curious about it. When I was 30, I enjoyed it. When I was 40, I asked for it. When I was 50, I paid for it. When I was 60, I prayed for it. When I was 70, I forgot about it. Now I'm 80. The damn things are growing wild on the beach, and I'm too old to squat." A drunk man who smelled like beer sat down on a subway seat next to a priest. The man's tie was stained, his face was smeared with red lipstick, and a half-empty bottle of gin was sticking out of his torn coat pocket. He opened his newspaper and began to read. After a few minutes, the man turned to the priest and asked, "Say, Father, what causes arthritis?" The priest replies, "My son, it's caused by loose living, being with cheap, wicked women, too much alcohol, and contempt for your fellow man." "Well, I'll be darned," the drunk muttered, returning to his newspaper. The priest, thinking about what he said, nudged the drunk and apologized. "I'm sorry to come on so strong. How long have you had arthritis?" "I don't have it, Father. I was just reading here that the Pope does." A white guy, a black guy, and a Chinese guy go to work at a coal mine. When they arrive, the manager assigns each of them a task. The white guy, Frank, is in charge of digging. The black guy, Jamal, is in charge of transportation. The Chinese guy, Wong, is in charge of supplies. They get to work, and everything is going smoothly. Frank is digging up the coal at a rapid pace. Jamal is quickly transporting the coal, and the two have quite the efficient operation going. Slowly, Frank's pick begins to go dull, and his shovel handle is breaking off. Jamal's transportation cart has a rickety wheel, and they need replacements from their supply man, Wong. However, Wong is nowhere to be found. In fact, no one has seen him all day long. Frustrated, Frank and Jamal go to find the manager and explain the situation. The manager is equally upset. The 3 of them go about the mine looking to find Wong. They search high and low, but Wong can't be found anywhere. Extremely frustrated and about to give up, they decide to take a look down a dark, abandoned shaft. They peek their heads in, and suddenly Wong jumps out of nowhere and yells, "Surprise!" I was talking to my neighbor's 6-year-old daughter, and she said she wanted to be president someday. Both of her parents, liberal Democrats, were standing there, so I asked her, "If you were to be the president, what's the first thing you would do?" She replied, "I'd give food and houses to all the homeless people." "Wow, what a worthy goal," I told her. "You don't have to wait until you're president to do that. You can come over to my house and mow the grass, pull weeds, and sweep my yard, and I'll pay you $50. Then I'll take you over to the grocery store where the homeless guy hangs out, and you can give him the $50 to use toward food or a new house." She thought that over for a few seconds because she's only 6. And while her mom glared at me, the little girl looked me straight in the eye and asked, "Why doesn't the homeless guy come over and do the work, and you can just pay him the $50? And I said, "Welcome to the Republican Party. Her folks still aren't talking to me." A lady applied for the position of a housemaid. Asked why she left her last employment, she said, "Sir, the wages were good, the living conditions were quite comfortable, but it was the most ridiculous place I've ever worked." They played this game they called bridge. Last night, a lot of folks were there. As I was about to bring the refreshments, I heard a man tell a lady, "Lay down and let's see what you've got." Another man said, "I have strength, but not much length." Yet another man told a lady, "Take your hand off my trick. I dropped dead when a lady said, 'You forced me. You jumped me twice, but you didn't have the strength for even one good raise.' Another lady was talking about protecting her honor. One lady told another, "Now it's my turn to play with your husband. You play with mine." I packed my bags, took my hat and coat, and was leaving when I heard a young man say, "I guess we can go home now. This is the last rubber." It was George the mailman's last day on the job after 35 years of carrying the mail through all kinds of weather to the same neighborhood. When he arrived at the first house on his route, he was greeted by the whole family who congratulated him and sent him on his way with a tidy gift envelope. At the second house, they presented him with a box of fine cigars. The folks at the third house handed him a selection of terrific fishing lures. At the fourth house, he was met at the door by a strikingly beautiful blonde woman in a revealing negligee. She took him by the hand, gently led him through the door, which she closed behind him, and took him up the stairs to the bedroom, where she blew his mind with the most passionate love he had ever experienced. When he had enough, they went downstairs and she fixed him a giant breakfast: eggs, potatoes, ham, sausage, blueberry waffles, and fresh squeezed orange juice. When he was truly satisfied, she poured him a cup of steaming coffee. As she was pouring, he noticed a dollar bill sticking out from under the cup's bottom edge. All this was just too wonderful for words, he said. "But what's the dollar for?" "Well," she said, "last night I told my husband that today would be your last day and that we should do something special for you. I asked him what to give you. He said, 'Screw him, give him $1. The breakfast was my idea.'" A husband comes home from work early. He finds a strange man in his bedroom. "Who the hell are you? Where's my wife?" "She's in the shower," the man replies. The husband, furious, says, "Don't you tell her I'm here. I'm going to hide in the closet and see what she has to say about this." When the wife comes out, she quickly drops her robe and tells her lover, "I want you to make love to me until I The lover replies, "Well, if you open that closet door, I bet you'll even yourself." A college student wanted to sit next to one of his teachers at lunch. However, the teacher looked at the student with an arrogant face and said, "A swan shan't be friends with a pig." "Then I shall fly on," answered the student with a smile. The teacher was clearly vexed by the cheeky reply and decided to do everything in his power to fail the student. At the oral exam, he gave the student the hardest questions, but the student had amazing answers for everything. Therefore, hoping he could still fail his victim, the teacher asked him a trickier question. "You're walking on a road and you find 2 bags. One contains gold, the other cleverness. Which bag do you choose?" "The gold." "Unfortunately, I don't agree. I'd choose cleverness because that's more important than money." "So, everyone would choose what they don't have," says the student. The teacher turns red, and he's so angry he writes "ass" on the student's paper. The student leaves without looking at the paper. However, he returns shortly, gives back his paper, and says, "Excuse me, sir, you signed my paper, but you forgot to give me my grade." A brand new store has just opened in New York City that sells husbands. When women go to choose a husband, they have to follow the instructions at the entrance. You may visit this store only once. There are 6 floors, and the value of the products increases as you ascend the flights. You may choose any item from a particular floor or may choose to go up to the next floor, but you cannot go back down except to exit the building. So, a woman goes to the husband store to find a husband. The first floor sign reads, "Floor 1, these men have jobs." The second floor sign reads, "Floor 2, these men have jobs and love kids." The third floor sign reads, "Floor 3, these men have jobs, love kids, and are extremely good-looking." Wow, she thinks, but feels compelled to keep going. She goes to the 4th floor, and the sign reads, "Floor 4. These men have jobs, love kids, are drop-dead good-looking, and help with housework." "Oh, mercy me," she exclaims. "I can hardly stand it." Still, she goes to the 5th floor, and the sign reads, "Floor 5. These men have jobs, love kids, are drop-dead gorgeous, help with housework, and have a strong romantic streak." She is so tempted to stay, but she goes to the 6th floor, and the sign reads, "Floor 6. You are visitor 31,456,012 to this floor. There are no men on this floor. This floor exists solely as proof that women are impossible to please. Thank you for shopping at the husband store." Once upon a time in a village, a man appeared and announced to the villagers that he would buy monkeys for $10 each. The villagers, seeing that there were many monkeys around, went out to the forest and started catching them. The man bought thousands at $10, and as supply started to diminish, the villagers stopped their effort. He further announced that he would now buy at $20. This renewed the efforts of the villagers, and they started catching monkeys again. Soon, the supply diminished even further, and people started going back to their farms. The offer increased to $25 each, and the supply of monkeys became so little that it was an effort to even see a monkey, let alone catch it. The man now announced that he would buy monkeys at $50. However, since he had to go to the city on some business, his assistant would now buy on behalf of him. In the absence of the man, the assistant told the villagers, "Look at all these monkeys in the big cage that the man has collected. I will sell them to you at $35, and when the man returns from the city, you can sell them to him for $50 each." The villagers rounded up with all their savings and bought all the monkeys. They never saw the man nor his assistant, only monkeys everywhere. Now you have a better understanding of how the cryptocurrency market works. An American and a Russian wrestler were set to face off for the Olympic gold medal. Before the match, the American's coach pulled him aside. "Listen, this Russian has never lost. He's got a move, the pretzel hold. No one escapes it. Whatever you do, don't let him get you in that hold." The wrestler nodded, determined. The match began, and the two circled each other, looking for an opening. Suddenly, the Russian lunged, wrapped up the American, and locked in the dreaded pretzel hold. A groan swept through the crowd. The coach buried his face in his hands. He knew it was over. But then a loud scream echoed through the arena. The crowd gasped, then erupted in cheers. The coach looked up just in time to see the Russian flying through the air, landing flat on his back. The American collapsed on top of him, securing the pin and the gold medal. Stunned, the coach rushed over. "How in the world did you escape that hold? No one ever has!" The wrestler shook his head. "Coach, I was ready to give up, but then, just as I opened my eyes, I saw his, right in front of my face. I had nothing to lose, so with my last bit of strength, I bit down, hard." The coach blinked. "That's what made him let go?" The wrestler sighed. "No, but you'd be amazed how strong you get when you bite your own junk." The teacher stood in front of the class and said, "All right, I'm going to hold something under my desk, and I want you to guess what it is." She reached down and held up her first mystery object. "This one is round and red." Little Johnny's hand shot up immediately, but the teacher ignored him. She knew his reputation. "A plum, miss," guessed a girl. "No," the teacher said with a smile. "It's an apple, but I like the way you think." She reached for the next item. "This one is oval-shaped and green." Again, Johnny waved his hand frantically, but she called on another student. "An iguana, miss?" Billy offered. The teacher chuckled. "No, it's a kiwi, but I like the way you think." Johnny couldn't hold back any longer. "Oh, miss, I've got one," he said, grinning. "It's stiff, about an inch long, and has a red knob on the end." The teacher gasped. "Johnny, that's disgusting!" Johnny smirked. "Nah, miss, it's a matchstick, but I like the way you think." Little Timothy was a bright boy, smart, kind, and even fairly handsome. But there was one thing that set him apart. He had lost an eye in a fishing accident as a child. His family couldn't afford a glass eye, so his grandfather lovingly carved him one out of wood. Unfortunately, the other kids weren't so kind. They teased him relentlessly, crushing his self-esteem, but Timothy had had enough. The school dance was coming up, and he was determined to have a good time. There was a girl named Sally who had caught his eye. She was shy and often kept to herself, mostly because of the teasing she endured for her pronounced mustache, earning her the cruel nickname, Hairlip. But Timothy didn't care about that. He thought she was the most beautiful girl in school. One day at lunch, he spotted her sitting alone, nibbling on a peanut butter sandwich. Summoning all his courage, he walked up to her. "Sally," he said, heart pounding, "I've seen you around for a while and, well, would you like to go to the dance with me?" Sally's face lit up. Would I?" Timothy grinned, until his nerves got the better of him. "Hairlip," he blurted out and ran away. Three sisters decided to get married on the same day to save their parents the expense of separate weddings. As a further step to reduce the price tag, the three sisters resolved to spend their honeymoon night at home. Later that night, their mother couldn't sleep, so she went to the kitchen for a cup of tea. On her way, she tiptoed by her oldest daughter's bedroom and heard her screaming. The mother thought to herself, "That's normal, especially on her wedding night." She snuck by her second oldest daughter's room and heard her laughing. "That's normal too," she said, smiling to herself. Finally, she slipped by her youngest daughter's room where she didn't hear a peep, but she thought nothing of it. The next morning in the kitchen, after the husbands had gone out, the woman asked her eldest daughter about last night's noises. "Well, Mom," she replied, "you always said if it hurt I should scream." "You're absolutely right, sweetheart," the mother assured her, turning to her middle daughter. "Now, why were you laughing?" she asked. "You always said if it tickled I could laugh," she answered. "True enough, honey." The mother smiled, remembering her newlywed days. "Now it's your turn, baby," she said, turning to her youngest daughter. "Why was it so quiet in your room last night? Mom, don't you remember? You always told me never to talk with my mouth full." After dating the young lady for some time, the young man decides it is time to marry her. He proceeds with all the necessary plans, and finally, the day comes. On the day of the wedding, the young man has yet to pay the pastor for performing the ceremony. However, the pastor has a plan. The service proceeds as planned, the vows are exchanged, etc. Now it is time for the groom to kiss his bride. The pastor sees this as the perfect opportunity to ask to be paid. He pulls the young man aside and asks him, "Can you please pay me?" Not wanting to create a scene, the young man asked, "How much do I owe you?" The pastor thinks quickly and replies, "Pay me according to your wife's beauty." The young man discreetly pulled out $5 and gave it to the pastor. Although annoyed by this, the pastor continues the ceremony and says, "You may now kiss the bride." At this point, the veil is lifted from the bride's face to allow the groom to kiss her. As the groom is about to kiss his new bride, the pastor interrupts and promptly hands the groom $4.50. Four best friends graduate from college and promise to meet up with each other once every 10 years despite taking different paths in lives. When they're all 35 years old, they discuss where they should meet up. One friend suggests they should go to the cabin, located at the outskirts of a small town in Illinois because it had the best food in all of America. So, they all go. When they're all 45, they discuss it again and again and decide to go to the same cabin at the outskirts of a small town in Illinois because the town had the best fishing lake in all of America. When they're 55, they discuss it again only to go to the same town because the town had the best hookers in all of America. When they're all 65, they go to the same town because it hosted the best barbecue fest in all of America. When they're all 75, they decide to go to the same town because one friend suggested it would be perfect because it was the most peaceful town in all of America. When they're all 85, after deep discussion, no one could think of a place to go. But then a friend suggested they go to a cabin in the outskirts of a small town in Illinois because none of them had ever been there before. A nun stepped into a taxi late one evening, settling into the back seat as the cab pulled away from the curb. She soon noticed that the driver, a rather handsome young man, kept glancing at her through the rearview mirror. After a few moments, she turned to him and asked, "My child, is something the matter?" The driver hesitated, then sighed. "Sister, I have a question, but I don't want to offend you." She smiled kindly. "My son, when you've been a nun as long as I have, you hear just about everything. There is nothing you can say that will offend me." The driver took a deep breath. "Well, I've always had a fantasy of kissing a nun." The nun raised an eyebrow, but remained calm. Well, let's see what we can do about that. There are two conditions. First, you must be single. And second, you must be Catholic." The driver's eyes lit up. "Yes, I'm single and Catholic," he said eagerly. The nun nodded. "Very well, pull into the next alley." The driver quickly swerved into a quiet alleyway, and the nun leaned in, giving him a kiss so passionate it could have made a streetwalker blush. When they got back on the road, however, the driver's face suddenly fell. Tears welled up in his eyes as he sniffled. "My dear child," the nun said gently. "Why are you crying?" "Forgive me, sister," he said, voice trembling. "I've sinned. I lied. I'm actually married, and I'm Jewish." The nun chuckled softly. "That's all right, my son," she said. "My name is Kevin, and I'm on my way to a fancy dress party."